Hey, how's everybody doing? Welcome to the Art of Healing with your host, Dr. Judy Jasek of Animal Healing Arts and Matt Rowe of ParsleyPet. During our show, we are talking about your pet's health, raw feeding, and an alternative treatments for cancer, unexplained illnesses, and supporting your pet's natural ability to heal. Welcome, Dr. Judy, to this week's show.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here now that we got technology working.
Yeah, getting the mics. And, I had to go back to level one Texas support, and I'm so happy Chris was there to help. Chris is Dr. Judy's husband. And this is something that he looked and he goes, why don't you just reset it? And just hit the reset button. I was like, oh, that's a great idea. And just really just go through level one tech support. Apparently resetting fixes a lot of tech issues.
That's like the only thing I actually know how to do. Well, I wasn't sure how to do that on the Zoom mic thing, but like if anything's going wrong with my computer, I mean, that's pretty much what I know how to do. Right. Turn off and turn it back on. And then after that, need more help.
Yeah, after that, it's just like, we'll skip the next week. Okay, so Great. This week, I'm actually really excited about this. And what we were talking about in pre-show is that this is a question that I do receive, is can raw feeding prevent hip dysplasia? So, can it?
It's definitely a piece of the puzzle. So I think it'd be good to start with, well, what exactly is hip dysplasia anyway? Hip dysplasia is a malformation of the hip joints. So this is something that has a big genetic component. So if you are, looking at any kind of purebred dog, you want to make sure that the breeding stock, that the parents have been screened for this, that they've been x-rayed, because if the parents of a puppy you're looking at getting have been shown to have hip dysplasia, there's a good chance they're going to pass on that genetic tendency. Now, obviously, if you're rescuing a dog, you're not going to know that, but that would be, just something to help rule that out. It's why you want to avoid getting puppies from places like puppy mills or any breeder that doesn't have a health guarantee, because there's probably a reason for that. They know that their puppies have more chance of being unhealthy, and especially in large breed dogs, hip dysplasia is more common. So hip dysplasia is where the hip joint literally is just not formed correctly. And so as the dog goes through life walking on those hips, and usually what ends up happening is there's extra motion in the hip. Joints work well when there's a lot of ligaments and tendons and soft tissue structures that attach around the joints. And then there's a joint capsule that holds that joint nice and solid. And the joint is designed to move in certain directions for movement, to help create movement in the body. Sure. If there's extra movement, so, the hip joint is moving at angles it's not supposed to, there's excessive motion, the body wants to stabilize that. The body knows something's wrong. Body's really smart. Body's like, there's too much motion here. Let's slow this down. Well, the way it does that is literally creating bone spurs, which is the arthritis that we see. So when we look at an x-ray of a dog with hip dysplasia, there's going to be a lot of like roughening around the edges of the hip joint, because the body is trying to stabilize it. The body knows there's too much motion there. And so then this arthritis develops over time. So if the pet has a genetic predisposition, we're not going to be able to change that, but we do know that we can change the expression of genes. So then the question becomes, well, are there things we can do to keep that joint healthier, even though there may be a genetic predisposition? Because we know a lot now about epigenetics, where we can control gene expression. So the key things in preventing hip dysplasia, for young dogs, and again, this may be out of your control if you're getting a rescue, but we don't want to spay or neuter too early. This has actually been proven to change the way the bones and joints grow. The growth plates actually stay open longer, and it changes the actual length of the leg bones, which is going to affect how the joints function. And so you want to wait until the dog is ideally at least a year old before you spay or neuter, to prevent that from happening. Now, again, you get from a rescue, a lot of rescues spay and neuter very young because they're preventing, overpopulation. And I understand their perspective, but it is not in the best interest of the health of the dogs.
So I'm going to take a step back. So I'm going to kind of dissect a little bit about what you said. So now if the joint is not fitting tight inside the socket, the body's naturally going to inflame, creating bone spurs, which leads towards arthritis. So then if that joint is moving a little bit, the body's like, oh my gosh, we've got to protect that joint to keep that leg from coming out of socket. So we're going to create what we can create, which is the bone spurs and the inflammation and all of that. And that leads to arthritis. So what you're saying on the second side is that when you spay or neuter at a young age, when you spay and neuter, you are halting some of the hormone production.
Right. So the whole endocrine system works together. And when you pull out, so by the endocrine system, I mean your thyroid, your adrenals, everything that is controlled by the pituitary gland. And this includes your reproductive hormones. All of these systems in the body are designed to work together. And in a puppy or a kitten, these systems are developing after that the animal is born. And if you pull out a big component, you're pulling out a big piece of the puzzle, you're going to cause disruption in normal growth. And one of the issues is actual growth hormone. There's an actual hormone that's created that regulates growth and how big things get, or in the case of bones, how long things get. And there's a genetic, there's a predetermined genetics for stopping the bones at a certain length, or, everything in the body. It's genetically predetermined. That's why we're not all just 10 feet tall, there's this genetic predisposition, but it's been shown that when you pull out those hormones at an early age, it actually affects the timing of the growth plates closing, and they actually tend to stay open longer.
Okay, so you're saying keep normal hormone production moving in its natural state for at least 1 year of life for your puppy. Then after that time, hormone production goes down, and then you're safer to actually have your dog spayed or neutered, which we highly recommend. There are a lot of puppies in this world and a lot of them that need to be rescued. But with that, the longer you wait, the more chances you have to avoid hip dysplasia.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, if you have a pet that maybe has a genetic breed predisposition to hip dysplasia, and then you completely disrupt the normal growth of the bones and joints, well, it just makes sense that you're going to be potentially contributing to the formation of the hip dysplasia.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And thanks for dissecting that piece. So then we're talking about raw feeding. So now that your dog, no matter what time that they've been spayed or neutered, you're going to take a look at, can you actually help improve a dog's, that building of those bone spurs and that inflammation around the joint by feeding it a raw diet? Sounds crazy.
Right. And I think, absolutely you can. Now, that raw diet isn't going to magically change the shape of the hip. If, we have an individual that was just born with hips that, were not shaped correctly, and we have this excessive motion, it's not going to completely reverse that, but we definitely can help reduce the inflammation. So when we're not feeding a raw diet, and especially if we're feeding things like kibble that we speak out against all the time, and along with kibble, your high glycemic carbohydrates, so anything with lots of beans, peas, lentils, potatoes, grains, anything like that is going to be inflammatory in the body. And inflammation, so if the body's inflamed, if we're feeding a diet that's inflammatory, the inflammation tends to settle in where there's a problem. There's like there's a weak link in all our body. Like we all have our places where symptoms show. Mine's my gut. Anything out of whack, I get a stomach ache, first and foremost. Some people, how many times have you heard people say like, oh, the barometric pressure changed, my joints hurt, there's a storm coming in. Our bodies respond to changes in our environment, and we all have, and this includes pets, all living beings kind of have a weak link. So if you have a joint that is not formed ideally, and we have this excessive motion already, and we have an inflamed body, you've already have a joint that's set up to become inflamed because the body wants to stop that motion. And then you're feeding a bunch of inflammatory foods, you're going to escalate the pain and inflammation that starts in that joint. And the other thing, so there's two parts to diet. It's not feeding the bad things and then feeding the good things, right?
Sure.
Very simplistic. So the things we want to remove are the ingredients that are potentially inflammatory. And so we're supporting the body in general with good, whole food, fresh, minimally processed nutrition. But there's also some things that come along with raw feeding that are tremendously beneficial to proper bone and joint formation. So when you're feeding ingredients that are the building blocks for healthy cartilage in the joints, and you have this joint with a little extra mobility, but you're doing everything you can to keep the cartilage in that joint as healthy as possible, you're going to prolong the time that this inflammation sets in and potentially reduce its severity. So these are things like the ground bone. We were talking about this pre-show, the ground bone that's in a lot of raw blends, or things like chicken feet. And that's a little weird to people, but when you feed something like chicken feet or duck feet, there are full of cartilage and collagen and these building blocks for healthy joints, and they're in a natural whole food bioavailable form. So this is as opposed to, you go out and you buy a glucosamine supplement. Well, that's fine in theory, but those are all processed. Sometimes they're synthetic ingredients. You just have no idea how well your dog's body is going to be able to digest and assimilate those ingredients. When we feed nutrients in a whole food form, that's the most bioavailable form. And you're increasing the likelihood that those nutrients are going to be beneficial just exponentially by feeding it in a whole food form.
Got it. So you make a really good point, is that when we do buy glucosamine or we buy collagen from the store thinking it's not bad, but it's not bioavailable. It's in its synthetic based form. And so now when you feed that chicken foot, and really like it's a raw chicken foot, I mean, you're going to throw it in the backyard. They're going to eat bone, nails, everything about that chicken foot. And within there is all of those same vitamins that you would buy, the glucosamine, they're going to get collagen, and they're going to get all of those pieces in that bioavailable state. So then it's more, accepting to the diet that they can eat. And they're actually getting a little bit of calcium with it as well. So what other things could a pet parent do that has a dog that might be suffering from hip dysplasia?
Well, when it comes down to pain relief, and I think we did a show on CBD. I always like to start with CBD when it comes to pain medications and anti-inflammatories, because it's so safe There's rarely any side effects, and it's very effective. And even if at some point you need to move into more conventional pain medications to keep your dog comfortable, CBD will a lot of times reduce the amount of those that they will need. And sometimes if dogs are extremely painful, I mean, their hips are just really trashed. I mean, there are surgical options. That's kind of a last resort, but those are available. So that's worth looking into. If you've done these simple things and your dog just can't do the activities it would like to do, it's very sore, goes out for a walk and then has a hard time getting up off the floor an hour later. Sometimes we do need to look at surgical options, but even if that's the case, with the good nutrition, you're still giving your dog a much better foundation to go through that procedure. They're going to come through the surgery better. They're going to heal faster. The good nutrition, the raw food nutrition that we're talking about, is still so important. Even if, we can't completely reverse something like hip dysplasia, by feeding a raw diet, you are giving your dog the best chance possible to reduce the inflammation and to feel better without, more medical intervention. And then if that becomes necessary, then you explore those options. But having this good nutritional foundation is just super important. It'll still help your pet immensely in the long run.
And when we look at minerals, I mean, any one of those minerals that your dog is consuming that's going to improve their health all have an interdependent relationship in some way. For example, calcium and phosphorus have a relationship. Without phosphorus, calcium does not, build within the bone. So by feeding that raw diet, you are giving that complete level of nutrients as long as you have it blended well. You have it blended with, 80% muscle meat. Which they're going to get a lot of phosphorus from. They're getting the bone ground into it, about 10 to 15% bone content within there. And you're also getting organ meat, which is like a superfood for a dog, that you're putting in, all those levels that they're getting the iron and all the supplements that they need to receive, but it's coming in that balanced state. So they're receiving all of it at a good level instead of just feeding one. For example, if I feed glucosamine in a pill form, that's what they're getting. They're not getting all of the other things that may help support it. So by feeding just that one piece, I think we are limiting the amount of help that we can give our dogs.
Yeah, and I don't think we even know all of the nutrients that are in fresh food. I mean, we know the ones that show up on the labels, and you buy a supplement and says we've got this, and this that will help joint function. But I think there's so many things and so many interrelated ingredients, like you're talking about, that we don't even know about.
Right.
I think the true benefit of eating whole food really gets minimized. And once you start processing it, and the higher processed foods or the processed supplements, anytime you start to extract, like you look at a glucosamine supplement, that glucosamine is coming from some natural product. They're getting it from somewhere in nature. So just feed the whole food. And you know what? You're going to save a ton of money too. Like, put those resources that you would spend on supplements into feeding all these different whole foods. And not only is your pet going to be healthier, you're going to save money too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see this every day when, a dog gets fed kibble. I mean, it's a synthetic based vitamin pack or nutrient pack that they're putting into the kibble production. And so, and that kibble has anywhere from 56 to almost, I think it comes down to, they allow 23% of protein to go into dog food. So the rest is being, satisfied with grains and lentils and garbanzo beans, which are high in glyphosate. So you have all of these chemicals and sugars that are going into a dog's diet, which creates inflammation. And so then if you have that, no matter how many vitamins and nutrients you're putting in to try to get towards like a hip dysplasia or trying to get to improving a dog's health, I think you're just running an uphill battle, a battle that really is not going to be won with more supplements and more kibble. And I think it gets won with a raw based diet, somewhere where they're getting those bioavailable sources of nutrients in a
Yeah, right.
balanced
It's not
structure.
like there's no vitamin that you can take and be healthy and eat at McDonald's, Like what's the vitamin I can take that'll make McDonald's healthy? Like it doesn't
None.
exist. And it's the same with feeding your dog a
Right.
inflammatory diet such as kibble.
Yeah. So, I mean, with everything with the show today, I mean, I'll recap a couple of things is wait to spay your dog. Wait till at least about a year if you have that option. If not, you can feed your dog chicken feed. And if they're in pain, just for that, getting that collagen and that natural source of the glucosamine. Then on the other side, if they are in pain, go CBD. I am a big believer with CBD as well as you are, Dr. Judy. I've seen it so many times benefit. I mean, we both have old Chihuahuas. I have a 14-year-old. And when he gets to be a little grumpy and he's moving fine, he just doesn't want to jump up on the bed, or he's avoiding, his young movements of jumping up on the couch and doing all that kind of stuff. Giving him CBD over about a 2 or 3 day period tends to reverse that. And he
Mhm.
starts to get a little bit of his spunk back. And so with it, I've seen it firsthand, the benefits of, treating a dog with CBD. But, with all of it is always go see your vet. Definitely take your time and go see Dr. Judy, schedule a tele-appointment with her and have a conversation to see if you're doing all you can for your dog, but from a good holistic vet like Dr. Judy, because she's going to look at it from different angles and spend time with you.
Yeah.
And,
And one other comment I just want to make too, you're going to
yeah,
hear a lot out there that it's not safe to feed puppies raw, that it's too much protein or too much calcium or too much this or too much that. That's from uninformed sources. So it's
mhm,
perfectly safe. I work with puppies all the time. I have a lot of
yeah,
people coming into me with their puppies now for this reason, because they want
mhm,
to feed their puppies raw and they want guidance, and we just start them on it right. Puppies could be weaned right onto raw. There's no
yep,
reason not to feed a puppy raw. So if you're hearing those things, then reach out to a professional that can help you and reassure you that you're on the right track, and making sure that it's a balanced diet. You do want to make
yep,
sure that your puppies are getting appropriate mineral balance
mhm.
and getting the appropriate nutrients, but they absolutely can eat a raw diet.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it genetically, what do wolves do? I mean, if you look ancestrally, our dogs are only 0.5% away from a wolf. And so I don't think wolves are weaning themselves on kibble in the
They're
wild.
not going to the store and buying a bag
No,
of kibble for their puppies.
no, I think it's because they're opposable thumbs. Um,
Oh, they can't drive the car.
they can't get there. And so, yeah, and you don't see packs of wolves, sick and dead in a field. I mean, you don't see them. They have to thrive. They have to be healthy in order to hunt, in order to survive. I mean, they're out in the conditions. They're not in my living room sitting on a couch. They don't come knock on the door at night and say, it's cold out here. Can you hook us up for an evening? No, I mean, these dogs are surviving and they're thriving in the wild. And so to think that a dog can't be transferred over into raw, I'm trying to figure out how other they would do it in the wild. This is the only option they have for the wild
Yeah.
is to feed raw.
And in very young wolf pups, the mother and actually other females in the pack actually do come back and regurgitate some of the food as they're getting weaned and getting used to it. And not suggesting that you do that for your puppy,
Yeah.
but usually by the time you get
Commitment,
your
Dr. Judy.
by the time you get your people are gonna be like, that Dr. Judy's really crazy. By the time you get your puppy at 8, 9, 10 weeks,
Yeah.
they can be started on raw perfectly fine.
Hmm.
Especially these ground up blends. You buy the commercial blends, you're not throwing them big chunks of meat. It's already ground up.
Right.
So there's absolutely no reason that a puppy can't eat it.
No, there's none at all. We just tested a puppy where I ran a report here in the last actually in the last couple of hours, I ran the report for the puppy, and they're feeding that dog a kibble-based diet. And you notice that the dog had low calcium levels and low iron levels. And so with it, the kibble that they were feeding wasn't, I believe, dense enough, or the food that it was receiving was bioavailable. So I think there's more risk in feeding a kibble-based diet versus a raw diet.
Yeah. And the other thing to remember about kibble is all of the nutrients in it are synthetic. You look at that label and there's this nice list of nutrients and, oh, look, it's got all this great stuff in there. That's all synthetic because they process all of the natural nutrition out of the ingredients and then they spray a multivitamin back on, quite literally. And again, like we were saying, when you don't get nutrition in the whole food form, you just have no idea how well that puppy or dog is going to be able to assimilate it. And you're talking iron and calcium; these are such important nutrients. I mean, you talk about a puppy growing, and if the calcium is low, then we've thrown off all of the other mineral ratios that are so important. Iron, that's important for muscle formation, red blood cell formation. Being low in iron is really that's really critical. I mean, those are some really, really critical nutrients, and you're setting that puppy up for some serious health issues by not correcting that. If you didn't correct that, if you didn't find out and didn't get some guidance on how to correct that.
So for the next steps, if your dog has hip dysplasia, look at chicken feed or other sources where you can feed, like duck feed, that type of stuff, where they can get that natural glucosamine and get that natural collagen into their diet. And then if they are not feeding a raw diet, transition them to raw. If you have concerns about a raw diet, and if you're doing it right, you can always get a test from us that'll point you to the exact nutrients that your dog currently has, or have a conversation with Dr. Judy. I know that Dr. Judy buys her raw food from the same supplier I buy mine from, and it is the health of both of my dogs has been incredible. You rarely see, Dr. Judy is my vet, and you rarely see my puppies. I mean, I don't think you've seen Leo besides when he goes and jumps a fence and gets his leg caught in it.
I was going to say, except for when Leo's trying to cut his leg off.
Right. Yes. He's actually gotten much better. He stopped jumping. He's just I'm getting old. This is not fun anymore. So really with all of that, from a health side, and when I test Leo on his nutrients myself, he comes back at a really nice baseline in excellent health. And so and I don't feed him any supplements. I don't do anything, because I think we did a show on this on over supplementation, I think finding that good healthy balance. And the easiest way that I've done it is just feed a raw diet. I made it easy on myself. I quit over guessing it. I quit over trying to figure out how to do it better.
Yeah, a lot of people think, oh, that sounds so hard. It's really just unfamiliar. It's not hard. It's not hard. We can help you put a program together through some local suppliers. It doesn't have to be super expensive, and it's going to more than pay for itself in the long run, in the better health that your dog is going to experience. And it really isn't hard. I don't have time to spend hours in the kitchen cooking for my dogs. I wouldn't do it. This is easy. The only difference is I wash the dishes after they're finished every time. Other than that, it's pretty much thaw it and feed it. It's so simple.
That it is really that simple. So yeah, Dr. Judy and I are both business owners, and we realize that our time is very limited. And so we've got to make it super easy. And I need to make it so easy my teenagers will do it. Because if it's hard, my dogs will starve.
The true test, right?
The true test. Will they pull it out of the fridge and put it in the bowl? And that's it. That's really it. So it's as easier than scooping it out. So thank you, Dr. Judy, for this week's show. I hope everybody that watched it today has a little bit more knowledge to help their dog fight through hip dysplasia and any issues that they do have.
You're welcome. Always happy to be here and provide some education. I think it's just so important for people to be informed.
Yep, absolutely. And if you ever want to get a hold of either one of us, our website is down below in the actual description feed itself. I've included Dr. Judy's website in there and my website as well. So definitely reach out to us, book an appointment with Dr. Judy. It'll be the best money you have ever spent this year for your puppy. Okay.
All
Thank you
right.
guys very much. Be good and enjoy your day.
Bye, everybody.